Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ash, National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement, and we are so glad you are here with us today. And here's the reality. The Department of War is raising the bar. New CMMC requirements are rolling out. And if you want to compete for DoW contracts or keep the ones you have, compliance is not optional anymore. The good news is that you are exactly in the right place to get ahead of this. We're thrilled to bring you this bonus session in our 2026 Continuing Education Workshop Series. Today, we're diving deep into CMMC, what it is, what's changing, and most importantly, what you need to do to stay compliant and competitive. I want to give a special welcome back to those of you who joined us for our GSA series over the past couple of weeks. We're excited you're back for more learning. Whether you're just getting started with CMMC or you're looking to level up your compliance knowledge, you're going to walk away today with actionable strategies from two of the best in the business. Before we jump in, let me give those of you just joining us for the first time a quick overview of what we offer at the Veteran Institute for Procurement. We have 6 specialized training programs designed to give veteran-owned small businesses the competitive edge they need to win in the federal contracting and beyond. Our 3 federal procurement programs are Start, Grow, and Advance, and they take you from foundational contracting knowledge all the way to advanced strategies for sustained growth. We also offer 3 sector-specific programs, aerospace, international, and corporate, focused on helping you break into and scale in aerospace, global markets, and private sector markets. All programs are offered at no cost to veteran entrepreneurs, and we have a full training calendar for 2026. Coming up next on our calendar, we have VIP Advance in just a couple of weeks, followed by aerospace. And if you're considering new markets, mark your calendar for VIP Corporate in May and our VIP International in June. These programs are only offered, our sector-specific programs are only offered once a year, and the spots do fill up fast, especially with everything shifting in the procurement landscape right now. Head to VIP, nationalvip.org to apply and secure your spot. We also have 3 start sessions coming up, March, April, and June, and a grow class in March. So if you've already completed Start or Grow, we'd love your help in spreading the word to fellow veteran entrepreneurs. Now, let me introduce our speakers for today from CohnReznick. First up is Steve Gilmer. Steve is a certified Chief Information Security Officer and a director in CohnReznick's cybersecurity practice with over 30 years of experience securing sensitive data and systems. He served as in-house Chief Information Security Officer for Fortune 10 aerospace and defense companies, and he's been on the front lines implementing CMMC guidelines across the defense industrial base. Steve is also a CMMC registered practitioner, so he knows this world inside and out. Next, we have Dariush Bepudi. Dariush is a director of CohnReznick with over 20 years of experience in IT risk and security management. He's a LEED certified CMMC assessor and registered practitioner who specializes in frameworks like NIST and has helped countless organizations and companies like yours to prepare for and pass their CMMC assessments. If there's someone who knows what makes an assessment succeed or fail, it's Dariush. These two are going to walk you through everything you need to know, what CMMC is, the different levels of assessment, and how the process works, why some businesses fail their assessments, and how to make sure you're not one of them. Steve and Dariush, the floor is yours. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Barbara. We appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. We're going to walk you through a couple different topics today. We encourage questions. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A section, and we'll answer them live if they make sense, or towards the end if it's easier that way. If we go to the next slide, please. So here's the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about CUI, give you an understanding of what it is, why it's important, and then we'll move into CMMC in general and talk about the intent of the program. We'll move you through the various CMMC services, including C3PAO or your certifications, and we can give you real world feedback about assessments. Dariush and I have been involved for a very long time, and we, as a company, CohnReznick, we do both readiness and we do assessments. So we have a lot of experience helping organizations get ready, real world experience there, as well as what's the results? What's it like to go through an assessment, to sit in there, to be an assessor, and to help that. On top of it, as an organization, as a C3PAO, we have been assessed twice ourselves by DIPCAC. So we know what it's like to be on the receiving end of that assessment. So we look forward to discussing all this with you today. Next slide, please. All right. Just real quickly break down the types of CUI and types of assets that you might come across as you're preparing your own SSP or system security plan. So CUI itself is a very gray area for a lot of people. There's two basic types of CUI, but that breaks down into many, many subtypes. The first is just what we call basic CUI, and that's information that the government wishes to protect. Then there's specified CUI. That could be something like export control data, or control technical information, or control defense information. And if you go to the National Archives or nara.gov, they maintain an official repository of all the different types and the different specifications that are out there. That is an ever-growing classification, so it's not static. So do recommend that you take a look at that site and pay attention to it. But you will get CUI that you need to protect in the course of doing work with the Department of Defense or Department of War. The easiest way to think about it is it's the data that sits in between public data and classified data. So it's not, doesn't have a classification of secret, top secret, etc. It's not public. It's that data that sits in between. That's controlled unclassified information, or CUI. And from there, you need to make sure that you protect the data and the assets that either process, store, or transmit CUI. So you can think about all of your applications. You can think about all of your hardware, your infrastructure, your network, everything that you use that may process, store, or transmit that type of data. And so when we talk about what's in scope and what needs to be protected, it's all of that information. Bottom line is that you need to know what it is. You need to document that. So you need to have it, an asset inventory, as we have up here. You need to have the system security plan, the SSP. You need to understand your network. You need to understand how data flows through your network. You need to be prepared to show how you meet all the controls and objectives. CMMC itself, in order to protect it, relies on the NIST 800-171 Release 2. And that release number 2 is critical because if you just go look at NIST, the current release is 3. What's required under CMMC is release 2. And there's 110 controls and 320 objectives that need to be met in order to meet your CMMC certification. At the end of the day, once you have all of that in place, somebody like Dariush, acting as a C3PAO, he's a lead certified assessor, will come into your organization and he will assess you against those controls. And you must pass all 110 controls and 320 objectives in order to get your CMMC certification. Let me take a pause there. Dariush, anything you'd like to add in around CUI or different asset types?
Sure. Let me a little bit expand on the asset types. So what you see in this slide, there are two. The first two asset types, as Steve said, the CUI assets and the security protection assets are the asset types that are included in an assessment. However, there are two additional asset types that lots of organizations seeking OSAs, seeking certification, or OSCs miss in their inventories, and that's why they run into difficulties getting certification. So one of those is the contractor risk managed assets. Those are assets that may or may not have CUI, uh, 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 that they don't have CUI. They are not intended to process CUI, but they are sitting logically in the same network, for example, that in the same corporate network and so on and so forth. You need to account for that into your system security plan under the contractor risk managed assets. And you have to show that how you have secured those assets without endangering, because they are not logically separate, without endangering the CUI assets on the same network. And the last one is very important, is your get out of jail free card from the Department of War. It's called the specialized assets. So you have some assets that are there just to do one thing, like in a lab, Internet of Things, operational technology, and most importantly, government furnished equipment that you have gotten from the Pentagon to do some tasks. Those also you need to inventory them, but those are out of the assessment scope. So you still have to put them into your inventory and into your system security plan, but those are outside of the scope of the assessment.
Thanks, Dariush. So the important thing here is that there's multiple types of assets that are involved. Obviously, we have the CUI. The takeaway, the simple takeaway, is that you as an organization need to know what all these are, have it documented, know how it's being used, and be able to prove that, provide evidence to the assessors about your assets, where the CUI flows, and how it takes place. The good news is, where no one's asking you, if you look at like the specialized assets, to take say an electron microscope and put 110 controls against that. That's why this exists. So we will walk through this. We'll walk through CMMC. I see a question out there. Thank you. An example of when CUI and CMMC is required. It's based on the contracts that you get from the Department of War. It is specified in those contracts that you will have CMMC. If you are not a prime, but you're a sub, meaning that you get your work from one of the primes, or you could even be 3 or 4 layers down in that master contract chain, because subs can go many layers deep. The requirements will be flowed down to you. So typically DFARS 7012 is the first one you'll get. And then there's 70, 18, 19, what is it, 21, Dariush?
21, yep. 25, yeah.
Yep, thank you. So those will be flowed down to you. And if you get those as a sub and you are contracting out to somebody else for part of your work, you are required to flow those down. So it's required whenever you get those requirements in your contracts, either from the government itself or from your prime. If you're planning to do contracting with the DOW, yes, you need to have these in place. Now, the rule just went into place last November. We're in a little bit of a grace period where they are staggering out putting this into the contracts over the next couple of years. So it is possible you could get a contract today that doesn't have it. It's also possible you can get a contract today that does. No organization knows exactly when their first contract will have the requirement. They just know it will be required very soon.
And the requirement, sorry, Steve, and the requirement is at the time of the award of the contract. So you can still bid on the contract without without being certified. If, for example, the contract requires CMMC level 2 certifications, but at the time of the award, the contract officer has to make sure that you have the requisite certifications. There are exceptions for that. For example, the Department of the Army on one of their contracts, has issued an RFI. You can go to sam.gov and see an RFI. To get the RFP with the technical requirements, you have to show the contracting officer that you have met the CMMC level 2 requirements for that contract.
Yeah, perfect. And that, boils down to right now, for most organizations, it would be a competitive advantage to have your CMMC level 2 certification. And we'll talk about the different levels in just a minute if you're not familiar with the levels. But it would be a competitive advantage. The intent is over the next couple of years, it will be an absolute requirement for you to have it. You will not be able to do the work if you don't have your CMMC level 2. The other piece here, so there's what the government requires, and then there's what the primes are asking. And as somebody who has worked with the primes, we have a lot of subs. I had over 20,000 subs in my past. And so many of the primes are asking for all organizations to become CMMC level 2 because they want to know that they can flow work down to you at any point and not have to worry that you're not ready for this work. So there's a lot of push in the marketplace for all businesses to get to CMMC level 2, even if from the DoD's perspective, the contract doesn't require it today. And I just want to point that out. That's the marketplace pressure, not the DoD's requirements. Next slide, please. And while we're going there, I'll answer the last part of the question around, do you need it for VA contracts? Today, only the DoD is requiring it in contracts to meet CMMC. However, we are seeing multiple contracts from other branches of the government who are reserving the right to implement this in the near future. Most organizations are waiting for the DoD to get through their rollout. So we do expect these NIST 800-171 requirements to be there in other contracts. I have other clients that are outside the DoD who have requirements to meet NIST 800-171 Release 3. It's not spelled out as part of CMMC or anything else, but so we are seeing other agencies put very similar requirements out there. So no, you don't need CMMC for the VA today, but preparing these controls and being able to meet them for your business will absolutely help you meet business in the future. All right. Darius, you want to talk about what is CMMC?
Yeah. So CMMC stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. The joke in the CMMC ecosystem is that it's neither cybersecurity nor maturity model. So only the last C is correct, that it is a certification. The reason we are saying is not cybersecurity, it's because it has non-cyber controls, such as the controls around risk assessment, the controls around background checks, personal security. There are controls around physical security that has nothing to do with cyber. So it's above and beyond cybersecurity. Maturity model, there is no maturity. There are three levels, but there is no process by which you can show, well, I am doing things ad hoc today. Tomorrow, I have a continuous improvement plan, so therefore I'm meeting the requirements. It's a binary framework, namely that you are either meeting the control or you are not meeting the control. There is no partially meeting. There is no partially met that you can have with other thing based on your maturity level. It applies to the defense industrial base, and the contractors are in a wide variety of industries across all the industries. The scope of the framework, where you need to apply CMMC is if you have federal contract information, where CUI is a subset of federal contract information. People are getting, sometimes confused. So federal contract information is essentially any non-public communication that you have with the federal government is federal contract information. So that needs to be, there are 15 basic frameworks, 15 basic controls that you need to apply to protect the federal contract information. A subset of federal contract information is the controlled unclassified information, where you need the 110 controls around that. The assessments for if you have controlled unclassified information, there are two types of assessment. You can do self-assessment if you have certain kind of CUI only, but most people who handle CUI are required to have a C3PAO, which stands for Certified Third Party Assessor Organization, to perform their assessment and get a certification for CMMC Level 2. The self-assessments do not get certifications. So we are as C3PAO, CohnReznick is a C3PAO. We are regulated by cyber accreditation body, Cyber AB, which has been credentials, assessors, and consultants in concern with the Department of War. So the CMMC PMO of the Department of War oversees the Cyber AB. Cyber AB works closely with the Office of the CIO and the Office of the CISO at the Pentagon, and they are the body that accreditize us or and oversees all our assessments.
So let's help everybody break down a little bit more CMMC and some of the C3PAO and all that. So first off, there's three levels of CMMC. So that
would be the next slide, Steve.
No, it's the CFR rules.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So there's three levels of CMMC. Level 1 is the lowest level or the easiest to meet, level 2 and level 3. So when Darius a moment ago talked about FCI, federal contract information, any organization that's doing work with the DoD is going to need to meet at a minimum FCI. That's the 15 basic controls that he talked about and the associated objectives that go with it. You may, as an organization, self-certify yourself. There is no requirement to use any type of third-party accreditation there. Some organizations do ask a third party to come in just to provide that independent look and attestation that they're meeting it, but that is not required by the regulations. That is a choice that they do. Level 2 is where most organizations in the DIB will fall. That means that you are interacting with CUI in some way, and that you have a requirement to protect it. That means meeting all 110 controls, all 320 objectives. In reality, a small percentage, somewhere around 1% of all organizations that need to work with CUI will be allowed to self-attest that they meet CUI. Most Contracts won't allow that. Most primes won't allow that. So the reality is for everybody, regardless of what the regulation says, you would be best served as an organization to go through a C3PAO certification. And that means having an assessor come in and confirm that you meet all those controls. Now there's a level 3, which is an even higher level of certification. In order to get to level 3, you must first set for and meet your level 2. So you've gone through the assessment with the C3PAO, you've passed, and now you need to get your level 3. Again, required by contract. So that's how you will know if it's needed. It is expected to be a very small subset of the contracts. All the requirements are not completely set. We do know that it's based on NIST 800-172. So again, if you want to see what those controls are, look at NIST 800-172. If you want to see all the objectives and everything you need, there's an assessment guide called NIST 800-172A. Use that. In both cases for level 2 and level 3, we always recommend you use that A or the assessment guide to make sure you're meeting everything. DIBCAC will be the assessor for level 3. So you will get your level 2. They'll come in. Once you have your level 2, they will assess you against the level 3 controls once those are in place. So that's the 3 different levels. Now, I see we're getting several different questions here. So let's just start with the first one real quick. If a prime has level 2 requirements and you are essentially staff aug, you're providing staff that goes to the customer site and using customers' equipment and everything else, you would not need to be level 2 certified yourself because you are doing all the work on the customer site. Now, the customer, that prime, would have the responsibility for seeing that all the level 2 controls are made. They may put or ask via the contract certain things like background checks are done by your company correctly, but you would be fine at a level 1 there. So marking requirements, we'll get into marking requirements a little bit later. So I'm going to skip that for the moment. But the final question there, would you recommend a new business in government contracting hold themselves out as compliant with CMMC? No, I would say that you're seeking certification, that you're planning to get there. If you say that you're compliant, people are looking for evidence. At a minimum, they'd be looking to say how you're self-certified, what you're doing to get a C3PAO. Many primes are actually putting out questionnaires and asking bluntly, have you scheduled a C3PAO? Can you show a contract? So I would not represent that you are further along than what you are.
By the way, under the new rules, and we will go over the new rules, the compliance with CMMC is that you have a score in the SPRS system and that you have affirmed, a company official affirmed under penalty of law, that you have the score that you have entered in SPRS is correct. Because if, for example, you entered, hey, I'm compliant with CMMC, here's my score 110, I did a self-assessment. Now, something happens, a breach or whatever, that you lost CUI, and the Department of War says, well, you said you're 110. They look at it, the inspectors come in and look at it and says, no, your score in reality was only like 2 or -8. So why did you falsely claimed, and I'm using those words very carefully, that you are 110? You are immediately referred to the Department of Justice under False Claims Act. You have heard stories in the press. Those are public, of various government contractors getting penalized millions of dollars by the Department of Justice that they have falsely claimed something. So it is not a matter of marketing, guys. legal jeopardy attaches to your CMMC status. So please go through the rules. By the way, you don't need to go to NIST. You go to the CISO's office at the Pentagon. All the scoping and the assessment guidelines, use those in the CMMC page at the CISO's office. Don't rely on NIST. Rely on those that are on that page, because that page also includes lots of other memorandums and stuff like that, where you can read additional information. There is the FAQ page, for example, for CMMC. There are so many additional information on that page that you need to be aware of so that you don't put yourself into legal jeopardy.
Yeah, thank you, Dariush. That was some good points. And to be clear, CMMC in and of itself is a bunch of different rules that comprise the NIST 800-171 R2 standards. So when Dariush says don't rely on NIST, he means for all the CMMC requirements, rely on that page from the Office of CIO. When you're looking at the cyber-specific requirements, that is still NIST, and rely on NIST 800-171 R2. I just want to make sure people understand the difference, because he's not saying don't trust the NIST 171 guide.
Yeah. But that guide has been called the CMMC Level 2 Assessment Guide. So they have renumbered the 800-171, and they have put it into the right framework within the OCIO page.
Yes, you will see it all there.
Oh.
All right. If we go to the next slide, please, we'll start talking about those rules we've mentioned. So I'll cover the first one, and Dariush, I'll ask you to do the next one.
Sure.
So two main rules that make CMMC a requirement. So the first is, you see here, CFR 32. And it establishes CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Program. This went into effect December 2024. And some of the things that we pointed out already, the Cyber AB, that's the accreditation body. That means that there's, I believe the exact number is 101 C3PAOs today. They certify these organizations to say that they meet the requirements to go out and do the assessments. That if you get an assessment from one of these 101 companies, that it's a valid assessment. So they also help out with who can do accredited training. So if you want to become a registered provider or practitioner, if you want to become a certified professional, or you'd like to become, like Dariush, a certified assessor, or they have what we call quality assessors. But if you want to get any of those official roles and titles, or you'd like to get your organization trained to be a registered provider organization, meaning you help companies prepare for CMMC, then all that happens through organizations that the C3PAO has put out there for training and publishing and so on. They also define the three levels of CMMC in the rules. In and of itself, the rule does not put any regulations on you as members of the DIB. It doesn't put any rules on your regulations. This is what gives credence to the program itself, so that the program has a requirement to exist and to do the things that it is doing. So that's what rule CFR 32 does. It brings CMMC into existence. And if we go to the next slide, I'll ask Dariush to talk about CFR 48.
So CFR 48 is the rules that created the various amended and then created new ones, which in those new ones did 7025, for example, and those new clauses. CFR 48 gets the three levels of CMMC that are defined in CFR 32 and says, imposes the requirements to meet the appropriate level of CMMC controls on the defense industrial base. This is the rule that went into effect November 16th, 2025, And that was where CMMC became real. So as of November 16th, 2025, everybody must meet the level 1 requirement. That is, if you are talking to the DOW, you need to safeguard the basic communication that you have with DOW at level 1. So those 15 controls you need to meet. Then for level 2, for controlled unclassified information, that was also the beginning of meeting the self-assessment requirements. So the contracting officer are now obliged to go into the SPRS system and check for your score to see if you have your score entered into the SPRS system and you have affirmed that score. So if you enter the score, if there is no affirmation, they're going to discount that. So there needs to be affirmation. And I talked about the legal jeopardy attached with those affirmation. That's the second point. Directs the DoD contracting officers to verify the SPRS system. And you have to make sure that the SPRS, whatever you have, the score was under a cage code, that is the same cage code that you are bidding on the contract. So if you have affirmation, you don't have an affirmation for the cage code that you are bidding under you are using to bid on a contract, you need then to, again, reassess yourself under the new cage code. Now, that also, CFR 48 also includes, so what I say changes the references to NIST 800-171 to CMMC 2.0. That's why I'm saying as of November 16th, go to the DoD CIO, because the rule says only the documents in the DoD CIO's office are the valid documents, not the documents in NIST, because they changed the reference to the DoD CIO nomenclature. And the last one, 2025, Notice of Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Level Requirements, is what it introduced, the CMMC unique identifier that is going to be used going forward by the contracting officer to keep track of who is certified at what level. Level 1, level 2 self, level 2 C3PAO, or level 3 by the DIPCAC.
Thanks, Dariush. If we can go to the next slide, to see a question out here around, essentially the question boils down, should we enclave? Should we take a portion of our network and say that that is our scope for dealing with CUI work, and get that certified versus certifying our entire enterprise? The answer to the question is it depends. And by that, it depends upon your business and your business models. There is not a right or a wrong approach under CMMC. CMMC says those systems that store, process, transmit CUI have to be protected. Some organizations choose to do it in an enclave, take that subset and do it that way because of their business. They might be 15% DoD work, and the remaining is commercial, and they can easily separate their business processes and their systems and do that. Other businesses, either because they're heavily, maybe they're 95% DoD work, or maybe they're only 15%, but the way they do the work is the same throughout, and it's not easy to break up their business processes and create physical and logical separation. They choose to encompass the entire business. So there's not a right or a wrong to that approach, but it does depend on what you do as a business and how you operate. The one thing we stress a lot is this is a business change. Even though we talk about NIST 800-171 and people feel like that's cyber and IT, this is really about a business and a culture change in the way you do business. It will affect those elements, but you need to approach it that way. So with the slide we have on the screen, we mentioned earlier that not knowing when your contract is going to say you must have CMMC in place today to go after this contract. This is the 4 different phases that have been laid out. It is that note at the bottom there is incredibly important. These are general guidelines. The contract officers can include them at any point that they feel it is true. The same is true of the primes, that they're flowing down, that the requirements are there today for you to do work with them as a sub. So these are what the rule said. We're going to phase it in over these 3-year period through 2028. So you can look at that and see this and see the intent to stagger it and roll it out. But the reality is you need to be preparing now. To paraphrase basically every major prime that's out there, if you haven't already lined up your C3PAO and you don't know how and when you're going to be certified, you are behind. And just to help put some of that into perspective, depending on the numbers you look at, there's between about 200,000 and 300,000 organizations in the DIB. There's 101 companies that can assess you. So you look at those numbers, it's a massive number of companies that need to get assessed versus the assessors that exist in the marketplace. So you could actually find yourself in a situation where you're ready and you can't get a C3PAO in time. So we just encourage you to get prepared as soon as possible and move your business forward.
Indeed, the blue box at the bottom, that's the above phases are general guidelines. The
Yes.
DOW contract officers can seek permission to include the CMMC requirements ahead of timeline as soon as the CFR 48 rule goes into effect, which it has gone into effect. So we have seen, I gave you the example of Department of the Army. The other example is that although, for example, in here says phase 3 for CMMC level 3 is phase 3, and as Steve said, a prerequisite for phase 3 is you have to have a phase 2 C3PAO assessment. The DeepCAC is already seeking volunteers for submitting to their CMMC level 3 certification. And the DeepCAC is not looking for additional work. The reason is DeepCAC is asking for that because there is no demand. They are seeing demand coming in from the various components of the Department of War. For example, the biggest user of CMMC level 3 certification is probably going to be the Navy. So they are seeing, probably the Navy gave the DeepCAC a heads up that, hey guys, there are major programs may be coming down the pike. We need, certain organization to be CMMC level 3 certified.
Thank you, Dariush. Next slide, please. So while we're getting the next slide up, answer the question. And I did not forget about the marking question. I still intend to come back to that. I don't want you guys to worry that it's been missed. We just have it covered a little further down. So for the other question that's out there right now, for small organizations, right? It's not uncommon, at least in our experience, CohnReznick, we often get into companies with single digits employees. As well as very, very large, difficult multinational corporations, right? We work across all those. But understand it's difficult for smaller companies to try and meet all 110 controls. The answer is, can you do something different? Yes, it depends on your business and what you do, of course, right? It still comes back to that. But there are organizations that go full virtual. You can set up an enclave, a virtual enclave, and a virtual desktop to get into that enclave. And as long as your business processing and everything allows you to meet all those controls in the enclave, which is possible, then you can do it that way and keep everything virtually contained. The DoD also put out FAQs here just the end of the year, early January. I don't remember the exact date. And there's organizations like construction would be a good example here. If the prime was to print the blueprints, even if that blueprint was CUI and only give it to the sub in a printed format so that that sub only has printed CUI, no digital. They can never scan it. They can't in any way digitize it or do anything else with it. They keep it paper 100%. Then you don't need to meet the 110 controls. So there are different ways that small organizations can go about getting a CMMC certification without having to implement all of the controls on their existing systems today. But there is no magic, just go get service X and it solves everything. You need to look at your business requirements, your business processes, how you interact with the data, and figure that out. A good registered provider organization, practitioner organization, an RPO can help you with that, help you prepare and figure out how to meet that, know what your options are. Darius, do you want to just real quickly talk about this slide?
Sure. This slide, I think Steve talked to you about CMMC level 1, as Steve said, FCI, Federal Contract Information Self-Assessment. Slide number 2, CUI, it's when we talk about organizational index grouping, these are the NARA, the NARA groupings of various types of CUI. So let me go through the CUI for the C3PAO assessment. There are at least 3 of them that is automatic. If you are handling defense information, critical infrastructure information, export controlled CUI, and or DoD documentation with a distribution statement of C or D, no matter what kind of CUI they have, if they have put the distribution statement C or D on it, you need a C3PAO assessment. The other one is if you handle CUI, even if CUI is benign, however, you have a portion of your business that handles classified data, you need to have a C3PAO assessment. Self-assessment, if you have a classified component to your business, does not cut it. So that's why if you look at the second row, it says otherwise C3PAO. And there is then the other ones that have super critical CUI, for example, Navy nuclear unclassified information, UNCNI, those requires level 3. Lots of aerospace is trending that way, and you need first to become a C3PAO assessed organization with level 2 certification, and then the DIPCAC will knock on your door for the level 3 certification afterwards.
Thanks, Darius. Next slide, please. So we've mentioned C3PAOs multiple times. We mentioned RPOs multiple times. The easy way to look at it, RPOs help you prepare, get ready, walk through your business processes, get your documentation in order, ensure you have the right evidence, all that work so that you can go sit for your C3PAO, your actual certification. CohnReznick, we do both. We help people on each side. As I said up front, we really understand this because we spend 360 degrees involved, including being assessed ourselves to maintain our own C3PAO. So we maintain our own documentation. We sit through our own. DIPCAT comes in and audits us. We sit through our own audits. So we bring that experience back into the field. The takeaway here that's important is the same organization cannot do both roles. Meaning if you hired us as an RPO, we may not be your C3PAO. We cannot assess our own work. I think that kind of falls into common sense, but there are a lot of RFPs and companies that say we want a company to do both. No one is allowed to do both. The other thing, especially thinking of the question a moment ago that said it was a two-person company. The other thing to keep in mind, every C3PAO certification has a minimum requirements around personnel to do any C3PAO audit. We've literally had one-person companies. They have the same requirement if you had 1,000 people, right? And so that requirement is that you have a lead CCA, so somebody like Dariush. You have a second CCA. So again, a senior individual that's been working in their field for a very long time, knows what they're doing. And you have a third, what they call QA or quality assurance CCA. So again, another senior advisor on every engagement. That is the minimum number of staff that you can have on any engagement, even if you're a one-person company. So that's important to keep in mind. That does help drive cost. We've seen that question, especially the smaller companies many times. Do I need all these CCAs? Yes, it is required by the Cyber AB and the DoD. It is not C3PAO that has made up these requirements. We all follow the exact same requirements there. If we go to the next slide, please. Dariush, I'll ask you just to walk us through the phases of an
Sure.
assessment.
So lots of people ask, what is a C3PAO assessment? In general, if you look at it, it's a 5-phase. Once we have a contract in place between the two parties, between the C3PAO and the organization seeking certification, there is a planning phase where we actually schedule those various other phases. Then we conduct the pre-assessment. It's a very bad name that the Cyber AB has chosen for this phase. The pre-assessment is nothing more than you give us access to read-only access to your body of evidence. We look at your body of evidence. We say, yeah, your body of evidence looks good, especially your system security plan. And then we fill up something called the pre-assessment workbook, which is nothing more than your cage code, the name of the company, how many employees you have, where are you located, what are the cage codes in scope of the assessment, what is the headquarters cage code, and then who are the company officials in charge of the assessment, both on the business side and on the technical side. And then there is the assessment, which is phase 2, which is the interviews for all the 110 controls and 320 objectives of CMMC level 2. After that, that will include for certain controls a site visit to any site that includes any physical CUI, let's say paper, digital, or those assets that are CRMA, contractor risk managed assets, or specialized assets, because we have to see how are you segregating those assets from the rest of those assets and looking at your physical controls. And then phase 3, we complete and report the assessment results, which means that the assessment workbook is uploaded into the CMMC EMAS, and then the CMMC EMAS automatically issues the certificate that then we will send you that you have passed the CMMC level 2. If you get a score between 88 and 110, then you get a conditional certification, and you have 6 months to close out the poems for the controls that you have missed. Less than 6 months, because that 6-month period includes us coming back and reassess those controls that you have missed.
Thanks, Dariush. We can go to the next slide. And by the way, guys, we'll finally get to that marking question. Yeah. So we put out some frequently asked questions here, just things that we have seen a lot. One of them is CUI markings. Is non-CUI ever marked CUI? Can our IP be marked CUI to prevent FOIA discovery? What's required on it? So there are lots of different markings that are required, both from yourself. So if you have a thumb drive or a DVD, for example, that has CUI, you will have markings on there. CUI will come from the government, and you can generate it. So there's different ways it can be created. Depends on your contracts again. Will non-CUI ever be marked CUI? Sadly, yes. If you recognize something should be non-CUI, you need to go back and deal with your contracting officer or your prime if you're going through a prime. You can work with them to get it changed. But yes, it will happen. Usually out of an abundance of caution, somebody is not sure, and rather than be accidentally release information, they will overmarket. There's lots of programs inside of the DoD to help prevent this, but the reality is it happens, and it does happen on a fairly frequent basis. Protecting your own IP. There is, as we mentioned earlier, the link is there at the bottom, cnar.gov, but you can mark data as it's labeled here, CUI ProPin. That means that it is your proprietary information, and this tells the DoD and everybody else involved this is not subject to FOIA or other public or releases of information. So lots of things there. Some of the other questions that we have seen, I don't know how to scope the assessment. That's part of understanding that boundary. The question earlier about can I put it in an enclave or not, and when does it make sense? That all falls into here. Understanding where and how you process CUI determines your boundary and what's in scope. Level 2 is too onerous for my organization's risk profile. Understand that from your perspective, but the answer is it's not your risk profile. It's the DoD's risk profile, the DoD's data. This is their risk that determines that level 2 is needed. We understand for some organizations it can be difficult. But that being said, this is honestly, guys, this was a draft standard from a NIST 800-171 perspective in 2013. This is over a decade old. Your competitors, just to be very honest with you and understand the marketplace, just to the north of us in Canada, they are all required to meet version 3, which is harder than this. And they are doing that today. This is their version of CMMC, but that's what their government and they're doing, and they do compete with us in the marketplace. So I get it's hard, not ignoring that, but understand that your competition's meeting it and exceeding it. If you don't know if you have CUI, very common. At the end of the day, if you have the DFARS Clause 7012, all the numbers are fully spelled out here on the screen. You have the requirements for CUI. And if you have the requirements for CUI, you must protect it if you receive it. And it doesn't matter if it's not even marked CUI, you're required to meet it, even if it's mismarked. So just important reasons there to get it together and make sure that you are meeting the controls that you need to for your business. Now, if we go to the last slide, where we're coming up on time. Yep, go ahead, Darius.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we answer the specific question. So
thank you.
The portion marking, yes, there is a way to portion mark a document, but if you receive the document from the Department of War that is fully marked as CUI, you are obligated to safeguard the whole document, or as Steve mentioned, go back to the ISS, for example, in your case, and ask, hey, is this data element CUI or not CUI? Because you cannot DCUI a CUI document. It's only up to the department to make that decision. And so you need to ask the contracting officer to clarify the type for you. Unfortunately, then that's the way right now. That's the process right now. So you have to handle the whole document as CUI unless you get clarification from the contracting officer.
Thank you for filling out the detail there. So real quickly, I'm going to give Barbara time to close this out. Here's major reasons we've seen why assessments fail. At the end of the day, it comes down to not meeting all 110 controls, 320 objectives. These are very common ones. Documentation is huge. Getting it into place and making sure it's correct, not having your inventories. not having an external service provider, be it an MSP or a cloud provider, whatever that third party is, meet all the controls. So on that note, we'll go to the next slide real quick, say thank you, because I know we're at the top of the time. Very much appreciated on behalf of Dariush and myself. Barbara, anything you'd like to say?
Oh my goodness. What a great presentation, and thank you for, taking a very, it's I know we've been talking about this for over a decade, but it's real, and breaking it down into a very what always feels very complicated and detailed, but breaking it down into actionable items and answering a lot of just basic questions. I learned a lot. Hard to believe, that there is more to learn after, a decade of talking about NIST 800 and so thank you. Thank you so much for this great information and your insights. I'm seeing incredible comments and thank yous in our comments and thank you for taking the questions along the way. With that, I just wanted to remind everyone that the slides and the video recording from today's session will be provided to you, so keep an eye out for that email with those details shortly. Also, in just a moment, you'll receive a brief anonymous survey that'll pop up on your screen. We'd be so grateful if you could take a minute to complete it. Your feedback helps us continue improving these types of programs to better serve you, and it means a lot to our partners as well. Just in closing, before we go, I want to leave you with this topics like CMMC compliance. Might feel overwhelming, but you don't have to figure it out alone. That's exactly why we created the VIP training program. It provides you with the strategies, connections, and the knowledge you need to confidently navigate the challenges and changes in the procurement landscape. If today's session showed you anything, it's that staying compliant is about staying competitive, and staying informed is how you get there. So just a final reminder to visit nationalvip.org to explore our upcoming programs and to take the next step in your entrepreneurial journey. Again, thank you, Dariush and Steve, for joining us today. And thank you for answering the questions. And thank you for those that participated today. Your questions were thoughtful and engaging, and we're grateful to CohnReznick and their team for making this session possible, and to our incredible partners at the United States Small Business Administration. We look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming programs or hearing from you. And we want to hear from you about your future successes. Be well and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.